Okay, now we're going to talk about a 4-track stereo machine. This is much more typical of what you'll find in the home hi-fi era, and therefore if you buy something at a pawn shop or from a estate sale or something like that that was owned by a hi-fi enthusiast back in the day, this is more likely what you'll get. This is the most common of all the reel-to-reel hi-fi formats. This is going to be really hard to show on camera, but if you look closely at these heads, you'll notice again that there's 2 tracks, but they're thinner than the 2-track stereo that we just saw. They're a bit thinner. In fact, here's the width of the 1/4-inch tape on that tape guide right there. There's actually room enough for 4 if you were to put 1, 2, 3, 4 in that tape guide. You could see how there could be 4 tracks. This machine has 3 different heads other than the erase head, which is over here, and you can't see it because it's really dark, but there's an erase head right there. But if you look very closely, you'll see that this one's tracks are lower than this one's tracks. The top track on this one is perfectly in line with the top edge of this guidepost. But if you look at this one, it's actually 1 track lower than perfectly in line with the guidepost. See that? This is the reverse playhead. This is actually an auto reversed deck. See, I can play forward or I can play backwards. So on this deck you get 2 tracks in forward play and 2 tracks in reverse play. So let me explain the heads a little bit better. This machine only records in forward play. So here's your erase head. That's your reverse play head, so it's not used. Here's your forward record head, and here's your forward play head. Now I've cut a little piece of tape that I'm going to try to hold up there next to the head. And maybe you can see a little bit better how this particular head, you see that? Horrible camera angle. I need to get some light on it. Let's try some light. You see how that head records on the very topmost part of the tape, and then it skips a space and records on the next part of the tape, and then there's another spot at the very bottom that's not being recorded on. And if you look at the reverse playhead, I should have done some better lighting for this. You will see that it skips a space, then records on the tape, skips another space, and then records on the very bottom of the tape. So on a 4-track machine, 4-track stereo, you actually have a problem with compatibility, because if you were to try to play back a tape that was recorded on this machine both forward and backwards, so that you had songs on both sides, if you tried to play back this tape and that other machine that we just saw that was a 2-track stereo, you would get part of the music forward and the other part of the music played in reverse. So you'd hear a song going forward and a song going in reverse. That would be very annoying. But that's the way it is. Now, having said that, if you have a tape that was recorded in a 2-track stereo machine, like that Ampex that we saw, you could put that tape on this machine, play it in forward mode. This track would get half of the left channel. The other half would be right here in the middle, not hitting anything. And then this would get half of the right channel, the other half being down here, not hitting anything. So you could play a 2-track stereo tape in this 4-track stereo machine, just not the other way around if you've recorded on the other side of the tape. Sure, if you've got a tape that's blank on one side and has stereo 4-track recorded on this machine on the other side, you could play that back in the Ampex, but it would only be at half level because of the fact that it's only recording on half of the track that the Ampex is expecting. So there's a little compatibility discussion for you amongst 4-track stereo and 2-track stereo. Quadrophonic exists, although I don't have a working quadrophonic deck. I do have the head from one. If you notice on this head, you will see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 individual elements. There's the width of the 1/4-inch tape. There are, let's see if I can do it from an angle that shows it a little bit better. 1, 2, 3, 4 sections of the tape. These sections are the same spacing and everything as the 4-track stereo machine that we just saw, except for the major difference that these are all in one direction. Instead of 2 tracks split in that direction and then 2 tracks split down a bit in that direction, all 4 tracks are going in that direction. And that way you can do the 70s surround sound deal, which was called quadrophonic. Or you can record yourself playing guitar and bass and drums and vocal, which was what a lot of these machines were actually used for. So that is 4-track, known as multi-track. Not 4-track stereo. 4-track stereo means 2 tracks in one direction and 2 tracks in the other direction. But this is 4-track multi-track. Alright, so we've gone from having a piece of 1/4-inch tape that's all 1 track, then we split it into 2 tracks and sent 1 track in both directions so you could flip the tape over at the end and play the other side. And then we did stereo using the whole tape. And then we did stereo using half the tape so that you could you could flip the tape over and do stereo back the other way. Well, how many more times can we divide the tape? We started with 1, we divided it in 2, we used that in 2 different ways. And then we divided it again and made it into 4 tracks. Could you divide it again and make it into 8 tracks? Well, everybody knows what an 8-track is, right? Why do they call an 8-track an 8-track? It's 1/4-inch tape. When you play it back, it's in stereo, but there's 4 programs on it. Those 4 programs are each stereo. 2 times 4 is 8. There's your 8 tracks. 2 here, 2 there, 2 there, and 2 there. So yes, you can divide 1/4-inch tape into 8 tracks. The way an 8-track player does it is a little bit different. There's not a head with 8 individual segments on it. That would be way too expensive to produce on an 8-track player. So instead, there's a 2-track head that moves up and down. So if you look deep within your 8-track player, see if I can get it to focus on the head, you'll see that there's 2 grooves. Hopefully you can see it in the light there. Again, they're spaced wildly apart, but there's 2 grooves that can be played at any one time. I'm on track 1 right now. If I use the channel selector to advance to track 2, watch the head. It moved down a notch. Here's track 3, and here's track 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each time the head moves down, the guidepost that holds the tape over here on the left keeps the tape in the same spot, but the little elements on the head that pick up the recording on the tape, move down a notch. So you have 8 tracks, only 2 of which can be played back at a time. That's how an 8-track player works. So what do you think is in this big heavy box? Well, I'll just have to show you, won't I? Oh, that's the wrong side. That sucks. Look at that, it's another reel-to-reel tape machine. But this one is the ultimate. Count the level meters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's right, this tape machine has 8 tracks on a 1/4 inch of tape. And unlike an 8-track cartridge machine, it can play back all 8 tracks at the same time. Look at those heads. Just look at them. Again, this is no different from what we've looked at all before. 1/4 inch tape. Here's an erase head, and if you count them, that one's on top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 individual spots on this erase head. That's the erase head right there. And if you look over here, I know the camera's not going to show this up. They're all in a row. I don't even know if I can see them with my eye. But anyway, there's 8 there. So that's the erase head, and that's the record playback head. What? A record playback head? Not a separate record and a separate playback? Yeah, that's what you get. This is a Fostix. It was developed as a cheap musician's multi-track machine so that you could record 8 tracks on 1/4 inch tape. This record playback head is neither optimized for record or for playback, but more halfway in the middle so that it'll equally record and play back all about the same. But this is an 8-track machine that will record and play all 8 tracks at once. Can you take an 8-track cartridge, unspool it, and play it on this machine? Yeah, except for the fact that this machine only works at 15 inches per second, which is far too fast for that of an 8-track. Oh well. So with all this talk about different tracks on different tape machines, we haven't at all talked about speeds. This machine is actually the only one that I have that has 3 of the most popular speeds on it. 1 7/8 inches per second, 3 3/4 inches per second, and 7.5 inches per second. That is, of course, measuring how fast in inches per second that the tape is traveling past the heads. This machine gives you 3 choices. That doesn't mean that that's all the speeds there are. Another common speed for professional decks is 15 inches per second. If you notice on this ATR 700, this isn't the one that I showed you in the video, but another one just like it, someone has labeled the high and low speed setting as 15 inches per second and 7.5 inches per second. Because in a professional world, who has time for 1 7/8 inches per second? Basically, the faster you go, the higher the quality of the recording, but of course, the less time you can record on a reel. So it's a give and take kind of scenario. So In speeds, we have 1 7/8, 3 3/4, 7 1/2, and 15. Here's my Sony TC765. This is a 4-track stereo machine, meaning that there's 2 tracks in one direction. Flip the tape over and you got 2 tracks in the other direction. Notice it has a switch for 7 1/2 or 3 3/4, and it also gives the metric 19 centimeters or 9.5 centimeters. I've found out if you switch it right in the middle and hold it there, it's not in a click. It does 15 inches per second. What a cool feature that they didn't tell anybody. Why they didn't put a click there and say, hey, this is 15, no one will ever know, but I'm sure they did that for their professional model, which Sony is all known for. But there you have it. The 2 speeds of the TC765. Here's my TIAC again. It does 7 1/2 or 3 3/4 with push buttons. And yeah, I tried it halfway in the middle with the push buttons. Yeah, that pretty much just makes it stop. It doesn't do like the Sony does. It'd be cool if it did 15 inches per second though. Well, there you have it. Everything I know about reel-to-reels condensed into one video. Track spacing, track topology, inches per second, everything. And since I don't do many on-camera mug shots of myself, I decided to do this one with it spinning. Hopefully you're as dizzy as I am by now. If you have something to comment, please do. If you have something to share, please do. And by all means, if you have a different tape, track, or speed that I have covered, please let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Ta-ta for now, and Merry Christmas.